Well, look who's here. It's Lawrence of Arabia. Marco D'Amico, fresh off the Camelback, back in the 514, back on the program. Welcome to youtube.com and welcome back. It was nice to have a little bit of a break as Marco has you're reestablished. You're back on Montreal time, Marco, after a nice trip with you and your lovely wife back in Montreal. You've adjusted.
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying. We're
Yeah.
definitely trying. It's definitely going east west. Sometimes it's a little different. Depends how much time you spend abroad. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say at this point we're back. We're moving.
I
Definitely
love
moving.
it. I love it. And big things are happening here, which takes me down the path, Marco. I know you and I have known about this for a while, but let's formally welcome back a longtime supporter of the show, Little Bear Pet Store in Westmount on St. Catherine. You can find them online at littlebearonline.com, where you can get 10% off your first order with the promo code order1. And also, they have a subscription service for more savings and guaranteed deliveries and new sales every week. Check out their website and their socials for details, like Stella and Chewy, 50% off all August long. So take advantage of some savings for you and your pet to live your best life only with Little Bear. Shop online with delivery at littlebearonline.com. So, Marco, I'm sure you're aware of this. The Mason McTavish, he's not signed with Anaheim. It appears over the weekend that Mason McTavish's name is picking up momentum, and there's a connection with the Montreal Canadiens. I saw our friends Pierre Maguire and Jimmy Murphy expand their thoughts on this possibility. It also appears the Red Wings are perhaps a very serious contender for Mason McTavish. So my first question to you is, before we talk about the likeliness that Mason McTavish gets moved, when I look at the Anaheim Ducks, Cutter Gauthier, Alex Killorn, Leo Carlson, Chris Kreider, Troy Terry, Ryan Strome, Mikael Granlund, this is a rebuilding team with some nice pieces. Why is Mason McTavish's name out there in this speculation wind? Make sense of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with Pat Verbeek's policy as it pertains to how he handles his RFAs. He's not necessarily in a rush. The counter argument is yes, well, he did sign his goalie to a long-term deal, and that would lead one to believe, well, hey, if you can turn around and sign your RFA number one goaltender, why can't you sign McTavish? Well, the reason being is they just traded their former number one goaltender and they needed to shore up the position, right? So when Gibson's out the door and you need to find, you need to be sure what you're doing in that situation, well, you have to lock him up. When you look at a guy like McTavish, there's not that much to do. There's not that much to say, right? Like you're looking at that player and you're saying
Yeah.
he's got no arbitration rights. No one's throwing an offer sheet at him, even though everyone speculated about it. And Dostal, I mean, it's a different situation. Dostal to me looks like a guy who is on his way to becoming one of the top goalies in the league, whereas McTavish had like a almost like Juraj Slafkovsky in a sense, a tale of two seasons, where it wasn't really strong in the first half, and then it was really, really strong in the second half. So he ended really well. So in Anaheim's situation, there's no real rush, right? And the same can kind of be said with like the Canadiens when it came to Lane Hudson, right? Like everybody thought that July 1st, boom, he was going to sign his contract. Well, I've been told there's no rush on that regard as well. They're having discussions and things are cordial, but nothing in the form of hard negotiations. Well, the same kind of applies here, and this is Pat Verbeek classic, right? Where he always kind of waits it out with his RFAs. The most recent being Trevor Zegras, right? And I think that's what's got the rumor mill going because you've seen this situation before.
Totally. But if I ask, when they decide to move away from Trevor Zegras, right? In my mind, when that move was made at the time, I'm like, okay, they've made up their mind. They prefer Mason McTavish down the middle in Anaheim moving forward than they do Trevor Zegras. That's how I interpreted that decision coming from the front office out in Southern California. But here we are now talking in mid-August about the possibility, strong or weak, that Mason McTavish likely gets moved. So I think every Canadiens fan watching us right now would love to see a Mason McTavish. This is a 6'1" guy, over 200 pounds. Like, he checks a lot of boxes, and
Left shot.
well, totally. And you look at these, like, everybody loves the proven angle as opposed to, what might become. I'll throw a name out, like Michael Hage, for example. I mean, 140 NHL points in 229 NHL games. I mean, let's take a break here and talk about, okay, Mason McTavish is available. The Canadiens are kicking tires, as they should. Any responsible organization that's rebuilding should at least inquire at the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
What's it gonna cost? I mean, what
Actually,
world exists? A realistic world, like, it's David Rybacker plus, it's Michael Hage plus, like, first round picks plus your A prospects, right?
yeah, and even then, I don't even think they're really interested in the first round picks. My colleague Jimmy Murphy put out an article recently where he had a source indicate to him that the only thing that would really grab Anaheim's attention at this point is a current or future top pair right shot defenseman.
Right.
The Canadiens have one in Noah Dobson. That's not moving. And then the Canadiens kind of have one in the projection mold in David Rybacker. But I don't think the Canadiens are going to spend in one summer to go from having two really good young pieces on the right side of their defense in Mayu and Reinbacher, and then
Agreed.
trade them both the moment that they trade for Dobson. I think when you look at Stanley Cup winning teams, they always have a locked down, immovable top four
Right.
that just eats up those minutes, 50 out of 60 minutes a game if it doesn't go to overtime. And that's what the Canadiens have essentially built up, right? I think Dobson playing with Gooley makes sense. I think eventually Lane Hudson playing with David Reinbacher makes sense. And then you fill
Agreed.
your third pair up. If people want Arbor there, that also works. You could trade for a bottom pair right shot D. Alex Carrier could be extended. There could be a prospect that comes in and takes that spot. But ideally, your top four is locked and you interchange your bottom pair. And if that's the vision, which we've seen from Jeff Gordon in the past and the teams that he's built, I don't necessarily see the Canadiens trying to fill one hole by like exposing themselves on the other because, and I state this, when Noah Dobson was initially made available, or when I mentioned that Noah Dobson was on the Canadiens list and that they had kicked tires on him back in the spring, a lot of people said it would cost, Caulfield, Slafkovsky, etc. Right, and it ended up being two firsts and Emil Heineman because of a situation that unfolded. And I feel like that's where the Canadiens are right now. They're in a situation where they want something to happen for them to
Mm-hmm.
pounce.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that there's anything happening right now with Mason McTavish. I think this is summer speculation just running amok. I think that he starts, from what I'm hearing, he's going to be starting the season in Anaheim.
Right.
And the drafting of Roger McQueen, which is what started all this, is not enough. In my opinion, he's at least 2 years away with the injury he had last year.
Yeah.
He's at least 2 years away from sniffing the NHL. He's going to the NCAA next season. Lots of time to figure that out. And you can never have too many centers, right? And you look at a guy like Michael Granlund.
Exactly.
I'm not sure Michael Granlund's going to play center for the Anaheim Ducks. The way that Joel Quenneville likes to run his teams, he likes big centers up the middle.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that plays into it either. There's just a lot of situations, a lot of coincidental situations are creating this assumption that he's being pushed out the door. He may eventually get traded, yes, but I think if he does get traded, it would be for the precise need and the only need that the Anaheim Ducks have at this moment, right shot D.
And why, really? Because I would think, just to counter that, right? And, just so we're on the same page here, I totally see it the way you kind of outlined it too. I would be beyond shocked if David Reinbacher was part of this. Like, I think the Canadiens need a very good, fundamentally strong defenseman. I mean, they check the boxes with offensive-minded blue liners. They've got that in spades in two really super studs in Hudson and Dobson, obviously.
Yeah.
The counter, a little bit more counterbalance to the defensive brigade, I think, is something they need to do. And I think David Reinbacher would be an integral part to finishing that off and rounding it out, right? Which takes me then to why, in this hypothetical that we're discussing, in which Mason McTavish can land on the doorstep of the Montreal Canadiens, doesn't Michael Hage make the most sense in this hypothetical transaction because of the Granlund factor, that they give Granlund term, they give him years, that when his career in Southern California comes to an end, boom, this future center perhaps could slide right in, in a world that has Leo Carlsson and Ryan Strome as the depth center. Michael Hage could take the place maybe of a Mason McTavish as their 2C. In my mind, that makes more sense than David Rybacker today. Is that something that is appealing to Anaheim, in your opinion?
I don't necessarily think so, simply because Roger McQueen, right?
Right.
Because they drafted him 10th overall, big, tall center. I think the reason why there's fire burning in the Mason McTavish fire is because they drafted Roger McQueen. I think that and obviously the fact that he's still unsigned. But Roger McQueen, teams are looking at Anaheim, they're thinking, what's the vision here? What are you trying to do? What are you, there could be a time where maybe Roger McQueen is the one that's flipped for that top pair right shot defenseman. You never know. You take BPA when you go at the draft, and there was a rush on centers. You saw it, right? You saw Pittsburgh and Philadelphia successively right after those picks reach, to a degree for centers because there was a run on them in the top 10. So I don't necessarily think picking Roger McQueen impacts Mason McTavish. What I have heard is teams are monitoring the situation, but there are not aggressive trade discussions going on right now. Things are very much just like mellow. And with the Canadiens especially, like this is one thing that to be abundantly clear on this, the Canadiens aren't going to sacrifice their future just to get a little bit of help now, right? Like they have the utmost confidence in Michael Hage and David Rybacker getting to where they need to get. Case in point, they were non-starters in the discussions for Noah Dobson. So if you're not going to do it for a legitimate top pair defenseman, the apparent price for a Mason McTavish, though I feel like that's a high price, I don't see the reverse happening in this situation in terms of being able to go and get a guy like him. I think at that point, the Canadiens will go with what they have. Obviously we'll see what happens with Kirby Dach's health. If his rehab seems to be going pretty well. So, he's expected to be ready for the start of the season, and then they go from there. But I don't think the Canadiens are at a point in their rebuild where they absolutely need to spend futures to fill this hole now, because filling it now, you put yourself in a position of significant weakness in trade, because everybody A sees you coming, and B, you're going to have a lot of competition for that top six center because, Vancouver, for example, is a team that's go ahead.
But no, it's not like they're getting just to play devil's advocate. It's not like they're getting a reclamation project. It's not Kirby Dach or Alex Newhook. They're getting a 22-year-old with a massive ceiling. I'm not saying he's a superstar, but I mean, he's got a really high ceiling. And that's where the disconnect for me is you're getting a 22-year-old, and I would presume in the world which the Canadiens make a trade, is it a sign and trade kind of transaction? So he comes here with 8 years, or he comes here with 7 years, whatever the hypothetical may be, that a 22-year-old that occupies your 2C, it allows more patience with Kirby Dach, because I don't envision a world in which he's part of that deal. So he's still a Montreal Canadian. You don't have to worry about the uncertainty there. And you still keep David Rybacker, but you lose the what if with Michael Hage. That's my devil's advocate perspective on why I would personally take a massive swing on Mason McTavish if a world exists where he's truly available.
But then the problem is the price that it's going to cost you to go and get him. You're going to kick that down the line and have to spend it to replace the top 4 right shot defensemen that you just traded away to get that. So, and we've seen it. Unless it's a situational thing, and even Matthew Darsh, the GM of the New York Islanders, said it. You never see these guys get traded. Never. Right. It's very, very rare. And usually because of that, they get drafted rather early, and because of the lower count of them. If you look at the right shot defenseman in the NHL right now, under the age of 30, there are more over the age of 30 right now than there are under the age of 30, which is a telltale sign that that's going to become an even more tricky position to fill as time moves on, which the Canadiens obviously were aware of. That's why they selected David Rybacker where they did, and why they were so aggressive in going to trade for Noah Dobson, even though their biggest need was at center.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I get that, but A, the Ducks aren't shopping him, and B, I don't feel like the Canadiens are ideal trade partners in this situation, because although David Rybacker is one of the few that actually fits the mold in this situation, I don't think the Canadiens are at a point in their rebuild where they can go and do this, because it will cost more than just David Rybacker if ever it were to happen.
Yeah.
But it would just create a situation where you would have to course correct in an aggressive way down the line. And so to me, I think patience is something that the Canadiens have shown a lot of over the last little bit.
Uh-huh.
And, it's something I keep hearing is the Canadiens aren't rushing this, and they're willing to go to war with what they have, but they're always looking. I think that if the Canadiens do look for a fix at the 2C level, it'll be a short-term fix at the 2C level. They really like Michael Hage.
That's Marco D'Amico. You can follow him at RG Media. Pleasure to have him back, obviously. And we've got lots of very exciting stuff that's coming on this channel. That's going to surprise some of you, but you just got to hold on for just a little bit longer.